hope you are having a great day. And if you're not, maybe this podcast will cheer you up. You're listening to The Vert, brought to you by Ian Kayanja. Today we have a podcast. We're talking about the Lakers with a good friend of mine, Jason. He is an irrational Lakers fan, so hopefully, you can find some good in this. Maybe at the end, I got him to see things for what they really are. Anyway, as always, sit back, enjoy, get some popcorn, get some snacks, whatever you need. And yeah, let's get this thing rolling. So I'm here with Jason Allen Jackson, known Lakers fan, also known for his depression because the Lakers suck. And and I want to talk specifically about what happened last night when the Thunder took the Lakers' lunch money and then beat them over the head with their own lunchbox. So what can you tell me? How are you feeling as a Lakers fan last night? Because I sent you a text after the game saying you want to talk about it, and it wasn't met pretty well. So how are you feeling after last night's beatdown?
Ultimately, I don't feel any way about it. If it was against a team that was actually a contender for the title, I would feel a little nervous. But ultimately, it's okay. And OKC, they don't have any closers. They don't have any closers. They're great until the playoffs. We all know that. CP3's record.
Look, we're the clutchest team in the NBA. We have the most comeback wins this season in the NBA. Okay. And we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, the anchor in the middle, Steven Adams. And all I'm going to say is a undrafted rookie, Lou Dort, locked up King James. Can you explain how that happens? An undrafted rookie.
Well, ultimately, I like the saying, a squirrel finds a nut eventually.
Okay. Lou Dort, guy from Arizona State, did not get a contract until literally he signed a long-term deal right before the NBA went into the bubble. Uh-huh. Now, how is LeBron going to let that man lock him up? All I'm saying is rest in peace to the late, great Kobe, but he wouldn't let the Lakers go out like that.
Yeah. But unfortunately, LeBron isn't Kobe, and they're two different players. And LeBron at this age and at this time, personally, when I watch it, sometimes it's just like you see the age in him,
The age in him?
You see the age. And for him being, I'm pretty sure LeBron's 35, correct, right now?
Yeah.
35. And 35 when it was before Corona is totally different from 35 during Corona times. Because I was shook when I saw the gray in his beard. I said, oh no.
What, your childhood idol is aging?
Yes. It's just really me realizing, wow, he has to kind of like pick his battles sometimes.
So you make a point there, but we haven't talked about is how bad LeBron has actually played in the Lakers' 3 to 4 games in the bubble. I mean, the guy's been non-existent. He's been loafing in and out of play. The one game he'll give you 20, the next game he'll give you 12. And the Lakers are currently looking like Anthony Davis and company.
Listen. LeBron is still steering the ship, but we could not steer the ship without Anthony Davis.
So what you're telling me, LeBron is the captain of the ship, but Anthony Davis is the engine that does all the work?
Ultimately.
So how as a Lakers fan, your champion, your hopes are a championship. How do you expect to beat the Clippers with a LeBron James that does not look engaged at all, a LeBron that is kind of floating in and out of games? I mean, there are moments in that Thunder game last night where I even forgot LeBron was out there. And I'm thinking about LeBron from the past decade of my life. You couldn't miss him on the court because he would do everything. And then versus the LeBron that we've been seeing as of late, I mean, it kind of gives me shades of when LeBron first returned to Cleveland, and everybody was like, "Oh no, is he getting old?" And then he had that back injury or whatever, and he missed a couple games, and then he came back and was normal LeBron. But I'm wondering if the hope is a champion. See, the Thunder, they're like playing with found gold at this point. Nobody picked us to be in the playoffs yet. We are a threat to be a 4 or 3 seed. And so everything of this entire season has been nothing but a treat for me. As you know, in the fall, I was fully prepared to watch us win 10 games.
But, you really were.
But you know, things changed. Now for the Lakers, they came into the season. They got Anthony Davis in the offseason, trading Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram and Josh Hart and those boys for AD.
Yeah.
And what I think is funny is that now the Lakers have turned in. I think that I'd like to define the Lakers as more of AD's team when it comes to the fact that he leads them in points per game, rebounds per game, blocks per game. He leads them in every stat that's not assists. And so what does this Lakers team have going into a potential Western Conference Finals matchup with the Clippers when LeBron doesn't seem like LeBron of old?
Well, of course, for me, knowing LeBron, and you even know LeBron, it's like we're watching him and we're watching someone that is going through age and we're like, oh no. But ultimately, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to pull through because we've seen him do this in the playoffs. You know, he's a clutch player when it comes to the playoff games. That's why when it comes to this season where he's getting adjusted into the bubble and he's getting adjusted to the oddness of not having an audience and performing.
And we do know LeBron loves the crowds.
I truly think that's also a factor into it as to why he's not making as many points and he's not as flashy as we usually expect, was because ultimately
he likes to play up to the crowd.
And someone who's a performer, I know that there's a difference from when you're just performing in front of your guys or whoever, and then you're performing in front of a whole crowd. And LeBron is in those moments.
So, I mean, it's not like fans are going to reappear come playoff time. And maybe even in the next season, there have been some stories talking about the NBA could have a season-long bubble for the next basketball season until a vaccine is out for the coronavirus. Now, if LeBron with no crowd in the playoffs, he has nothing to play up to. LeBron's a performer. He's a theatrical act. And so, oh, man.
What are you talking about?
But
I hate Corona times.
We were talking about LeBron in the playoffs.
Oh,
and him not having a crowd to play up to. Without that crowd, what is going to be LeBron's driving factor? I mean, he's talked about how he's chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan, and that means getting 6 championships. How likely that is at this stage in his career, I'm not sure, but we've seen him. I mean, just looking at him now, LeBron, he's a better shooter than he was when he was younger. But he's far less athletic, and he's not going out there every game trying to get 40 anymore. And he's definitely kind of ushering in this Chris Paul mode where, you know, he's a competitor and he wants to win, but he'll pick his spots. And so he'll coast for 3 quarters, and then in the 4th quarter, he'll see if he has enough in the tank to turn it on. I think that's just part of becoming an older athlete.
Yeah.
And you have to. Right. You have to pick your spots. We saw in the Thunder game, he tried to turn it on late in the 3rd, going into the 4th. And, you know, for a minute, it had me shaking in my boots because he got back-to-back layups. But then he went back to being clamped by Lu Dort. And so with no crowd, with LeBron aging, and with Danny Green unable to make open jump shots, how can you beat a Clippers team with Kawhi and Paul George in a 7-game series?
Ultimately, it's going to be such a hard battle. I will not even lie. What was it? July 30th when the Lakers played Clippers. I watched that game and my heart was thumping because I said, "Oh no, oh no!"
When it came down to the last possession,
LeBron came through.
Right? Yeah.
And ultimately, I was happy for that game, but I was also very stressed at the thought of going 7 games with them because they are a strong contender. And
they didn't even have Lou
anybody. I think that's our competition.
Yep.
And they're literally at our own back door, basically. And now we're all in this bubble, but
Right. And so I think that for LeBron, would you define it as humiliating to lose to the Clippers of all teams in California? A Clippers team that has never seen an ounce of success to lose to your little brother in a playoff series?
Honestly, it would. But truthfully, the Clippers aren't usually like what we've seen all through our lives, We're 20, 21, and so we've seen the Clippers when they've been trash, and then we've seen them when they've been good but still trash in the playoffs. And so this is probably the best lineup they've had in, honestly, probably about 7, 8 years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, for the Clippers. And so, truthfully, if they were to lose, if the Lakers were to lose to the Clippers, it would be like a, dang, that sucks. But it's not like one of those moments where they're in the 8th seed and we're the first, and then they beat us brutally and we're all surprised about it, It's never something like that.
I mean, I think they're the 3rd best team in the NBA. Even if the Lakers make the finals, it's going to be tough for me to pick them over Milwaukee if Milwaukee makes it out of the East. Heck, if Toronto makes it out of the East, we saw Kyle Lowry completely dismantle the Lakers when the Lakers played the Raptors. Kyle Lowry had 33, 14, and like 8 or 9. And so if Milwaukee or Toronto, if they come out of the East and play the Lakers, I think the Lakers have been grossly overrated in terms of their bench depth. They got the wrong Morris twin. They got the bad one, not the good one. They got Marcus Morris, not Markieff Morris, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And then Danny Green not being able to hit jump shots. And Kyle Kuzma's just a wild card. You never know what you're going to get from him game to game.
Honestly.
Dion Waiters. His nickname is Philly Cheesesteak, if that serves anything. Then you have J.R. Smith, the ultimate blunder in the playoffs. J.R. Smith forgot the score and dribbled out game 1 of the, 2018 or 19 NBA Finals. Things like that.
Yeah.
But JaVale McGee, I mean, other than Anthony Davis, who are you going to be able to go to outside of LeBron down the stretch?
Well, that's the thing that I keep trying to bring back to it. All of these teams are very clutch, and all of these teams have an opportunity. But the one thing that a lot of these teams don't have is LeBron. LeBron is that caliber player. I know it sounds cheesy and it sounds corny, but literally when you have LeBron on your team, you have someone that controls the court usually. You have someone that can make those clutch shots when they need it. You have someone to turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
And not every team has that.
Right.
And I think this year is his year. And truthfully, I think this may be his final ring that he gets.
You think so? So he'd be done at 4.
I see it at 4.
I don't know if LeBron will ever get to – he should have had 4 because he folded in 2011 with the Mavericks.
Yeah, honestly.
And he should have already had 4. I think that in that series, LeBron kind of broke. And then now with the LeBron, with the way LeBron is playing, like LeBron before the NBA hiatus because of coronavirus was a different LeBron. That seemed like a more engaged LeBron. That seemed like a LeBron that was tuning up for a deep playoff run. And then he took 4 months off, and then now he's in the bubble, and maybe it's because the Lakers have already locked up a 1 seed. Yeah. Maybe it's because of, he just thinks that these 8 games are formality and the real basketball starts when the playoffs start. But still, I'd like to see more out of the best player of our generation in 8 seeding games that matter, because they help set your playoff rotations. They help you figure out who you're going to be able to go to down the stretch. And it should not take a 40-point performance for the Lakers to barely win a game from Anthony Davis. I think that if you're a real championship contender, if these 8 games don't really matter to you, it shouldn't take AD being uber aggressive down the stretch in your 3rd game in the bubble for him to get 40 in order for you to win. I think that when you have LeBron and you have Anthony Davis, 2 top 10 players in the NBA, these games should be coming easier to you. And yet they're not, because I think the Lakers are one of the most unbalanced teams in the NBA. They have a lot of star power in LeBron and AD, but they also don't have a for sure point guard. When you're banking on Rajon Rondo coming back from hand surgery to suddenly change your team, it's not going to happen. I think they are in desperate need of a scoring point guard that can go get buckets for them down the stretch. We've seen that every championship team LeBron has been on has had a guard that is a shot creator. When you look at the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade, it went down the stretch. D Wade was the guard that could get to the rim, that could slash, that could finish, and that team won 2 championships. Then you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers with Kyrie Irving and LeBron and Kevin Love. That team, Kyrie Irving hit the biggest shot in Cavs history, and so every great LeBron team has had these shot creating guards. And then now with the Lakers, all of a sudden that changes, and that LeBron's going to be the point guard of this Lakers team, and you're going to go to AD down the stretch. And it doesn't make sense, because every championship LeBron has won, he's played with a guard that is the definition of a closer. And this Lakers team doesn't have.
But ultimately, you would have to blame that on the Lakers, like the GM and all of the people who get to choose the players, because I think right when LeBron came to LA, they expected a winning caliber team because they had LeBron. But what I feel like they failed to do was add pieces that complemented him, And for every team since Miami, the Miami Heat team with LeBron on it, they had worked well with him, and it was a full set. And of course, we lost that first year, but we had time to develop. And then Cavs with Kyrie, basically without Kyrie, they were still it was basically a team that worked well. And
LeBron's known for doing that. And I mean, it's also why LeBron desperately needs a shot creating point guard, because every LeBron team ends up being LeBron is the son of the system, and everybody rotates around that, And so if we're going to use this analogy of space, LeBron's going to be the sun, and everybody else are the planets that orbit around the sun, and they play relative to how LeBron is positioned in the basketball universe. And that's how every LeBron team works. But that's also why every LeBron team desperately needs a shot creating guard, because LeBron loves to drive and kick out. And if you don't have a guard that can create his own shots, then you just have stationary shooters. And I think that's the pitfall that the Lakers have fell into. And it's like you make a trade-off. Anthony Davis is the best big man LeBron's ever played with in terms of talent. I don't think that AD's overall career is as accomplished as Chris Bosh, but in terms of just talent, Anthony Davis is the best big man LeBron's ever played with.
Of course.
But now that he's playing with the best big of his career, what is he going to be kicking out to Caruso and Danny Green when push comes to shove? Like you're telling me you need a big shot in the fourth quarter of a game 5 playing the Clippers. And you're going to be trusting Caruso to catch and shoot and knock that down. You're going to be trusting Kyle Kuzma too. I think that this Lakers team is a piece away. They feel a piece away from me than the Clippers do.
I could see, I have a piece in mind that would set it all together.
Who would that be?
That's Bradley Beal.
How are you guys going to get Bradley Beal?
I wish I knew. I wish I felt it inside, but I just know we need like a shooting guard or someone around that height.
I think the perfect fit would have been if you guys could have managed to get Derrick Rose at the trade deadline. But for some reason, the dumpster fire Detroit Pistons wanted to hold on to Derrick Rose, even though they've won like 12 games this season.
I'm really lost about that.
And Derrick Rose was having this resurgence type of season. And I'm thinking about this Lakers team with a resurgent Derrick Rose, a LeBron, and an AD. That is a real championship contender. That isn't just a very good NBA.
Dwight Howard at times.
I'm mad about Dwight Howard because I was convinced he is no longer a good NBA player. But he's proved me wrong. He's shown that he has serviceable minutes. And so, you know, it was baffling going into the season. I knew that the Laker mania was ill-founded when they were assuming that Kyle Kuzma would be their third best offensive option. If Kyle Kuzma is your third best offensive option on any team, that team is not winning a championship. I will die on that hill. I think Kyle Kuzma is one of the most grossly overrated Lakers pieces. He's a guy that he was a volume scorer his rookie year, putting up numbers on a terrible team. I think if they could have found a way to make that AD trade without Lonzo Ball, they would be in a better position than they are now. If they said, we want to keep Kyle Kuzma instead of Lonzo Ball, if that happened, then that was the mistake. Versus if they said, we keep Lonzo, we give you Kuz, Ingram, Josh Hart, and maybe Caruso, right? You get those four players, we get AD back, and they manage to keep Lonzo Ball. That puts the Lakers in a far better position because Lonzo Ball is a really good NBA player. He's turned into an average shooter, almost an above average shooter now because of his fixed jump shot. And imagine this team with an actual point guard. I mean, I'm tired of, LeBron plays point. Yes, LeBron sets the offense up for any team he plays on, but you need a point guard. And that's what we can't ignore, is that LeBron does need a point guard. In whatever system he plays in, he does need a point guard. And it's like the Lakers management has omitted that. And I was shocked when they went after one of the Morris twins at the buyout deadline and didn't go after another guard, you know?
Very dumb.
They want to get J.R. Smith and Dion Waiters now, but both of them aren't point guards. They're shoot-first guards that aren't concerned about anything else but putting up their own shots. And both of them are good NBA players. They're good role players. But in terms of this whole Laker mania, I was shocked when the Lakers let the Clippers get Reggie Jackson from Detroit. I think Reggie Jackson would have even been a good fit for the Lakers. He would have got more playing time with the Lakers because of how bad the Lakers guard situation is. I'm just it boggles my mind that Lakers fans are talking about wait till Rajon Rondo gets back. Like, what do you expect from an ancient Rondo who hasn't been an all-star since like 2010?
I guarantee you I feel the same way because I don't really see the hype when it comes to Rajon. I think he's definitely one of those people that, of course, is out of his prime, but of course he can control the court and he plays well. But I would say find someone else. In a nice way of putting it, I'd say find someone else because he's a little aged. He's been a little aged since he's gotten on the team. Honestly,
he's been a little aged since he left Boston, period. He had that 1 year in New Orleans when he was playing with AD and Boogie, and everybody's like, oh, Rondo's back. And then it's like, no, it was just a good stretch. And so Rondo hasn't been good since 2012 in terms of being a net positive on the floor. Now, his basketball knowledge, he can be a great team leader in terms of him coaching up the younger guys on the team, and he still has value in that. But right now on a championship team, I don't think Rondo can necessarily be playing heavy minutes in your rotation. I would have expected a guard that can at least create their own shot, like a Reggie Jackson, or try to go after Derrick Rose, or go after those mid-level guards that are offensive players that can score. And that's what this Lakers team is missing. I think that's the biggest thing they're missing, especially with LeBron's downturn in his scoring and his not unwillingness, but his what's the word I'm looking for? Apprehension towards wanting to go out there and get you 40. And this Lakers team is designed for LeBron to be putting up 30, 10, and 10 in order for them to be a great team. And when LeBron's 35, turning 36, playing after 4 months off, and I think that this team needs something else. And I think that their window is extremely short. Anthony Davis's contract is up this season if he doesn't re-up with the Lakers. And it say he starts listening to offers from Boston or from these other places, these places that have max contract slots. What happens if AD leaves? I don't think it's likely. I don't think it would happen at all, but he hasn't re-signed with the Lakers. So that's still up in the air. And if AD leaves, then LeBron's out the door. Like LeBron's already shown that he's not loyal to one franchise. He'll just put himself in the best position to continue winning so that he can control his own narrative. And so what happens then? If AD's out the door, the window's so short, and the Lakers have made so many mistakes in their first 2 LeBron era years that I initially picked them this season to beat the Clippers just because I don't trust Paul George in the playoffs. We know Paul George.
Right. That's why I'm literally like, Lakers or Clippers? Lakers. No.
I've watched too much Paul George. I've watched too much Paul George to trust him when the game matters most.
It's not in his veins, bruh. I don't see.
I think my worst Paul George moment had to be Game 6 in Utah 2018 when Russell Westbrook was doing everything, and then Paul George takes this double clutch 3 where, to be fair, Gobert did foul him, but the fact that was his best idea of a game-winning shot, and we lose to a rookie in the first round of the playoffs. That should not have happened with Russ, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony, but that's a story for another day. I think
let that hurt go, buddy. Let that hurt go.
I think, and that's the one caveat that I do have. The Clippers are deeper. I think they're better coached with Doc Rivers. I think that they have better weapons, but you're never sure what Paul George you're going to get game to game. One game, he can look like a top 5 NBA guy, and the next game, you're like, was Paul George out there? And that's the truth of just Paul George, is that some games he's going to set the Nets on fire, have 40, hit the game winner, and then the next game he is going to get dotted in between the eyes with a dude hitting a game winner on him. I mean, there was a video on Twitter that surfaced. It was going around of all the game winners people have hit on Paul George. It was like a 2-minute video.
That's 2 minutes too many.
and so that's a one caveat that I have with the Clippers. With the Lakers, though, I have more questions. And that without the shot creation, without the third weapon, I think, imagine, for instance, D'Angelo Russell was a sign and trade with the Brooklyn Nets. But I feel the Lakers would have gone after getting D'Lo back if they knew Kawhi wasn't going to sign with them. I think the Lakers were holding on to this hope that Kawhi was going to sign with them, and that stopped them from getting other free agents last summer that could be helping them right now. And imagine if the Lakers weren't so caught up on Kawhi. Imagine if the Lakers would have thought outside and say, maybe not every superstar wants to play for the Lakers. They may want to play in LA, but they want to blaze their own path. And we know that when you look at it in hindsight, now hindsight is always 20/20. Kawhi was never going to go to the Lakers. I mean, he at that point in time, he had just won a championship with the Raptors. Everybody was saying, is Kawhi the best player in the NBA? You think he's going to give that up to then play in LeBron's shadow? Like, it made no sense. I think the Lakers should have had a backup plan with what was going to happen. And it seemed that they didn't. They kind of didn't get Kawhi. Then they were just swinging for the fences on everybody else.
It was so embarrassing. Like, as a Lakers fan, we already had that horrible year of not making it to the playoffs. And then they're all cocky, like, oh, yeah, we're going to get Kawhi. It's all going to mesh out. We're going to have our own big three. And I'm like, instead of making big three, why don't you have this big two, but then you add great players.
Right, the right pieces that fit them.
And that's what the Lakers don't ever comprehend, I don't feel. They don't realize that they need more than two people against the team.
Right. You can't just have LeBron, AD, and some YMCA hoopers and talk about, I'm about to win the chip.
Like, you can't have those people and think, oh, yeah, Alex Caruso, he's going to come through.
No,
Alex Caruso. He's cold. He's cold, but he is not. You know what
Yes, I get what you're saying, that these championship teams, Alex Caruso, a good NBA player, he cannot be a point guard that plays heavy minutes for you if you're trying to win the chip.
Like Morris, great player, but you don't want him to be the backup for AD.
Exactly. I mean, that is such a severe drop off, and so it's like,
and there's inconsistencies in the whole roster.
And that's the thing. They never went after a guy that they knew what they were going to get from them every night out. Yeah. A lot of their pieces are these inconsistent players where you're like, yeah, Kuzma has the potential to give us 30, but then he'll also have a game where he gives you 5. You know, right. Morris has the potential to give you 20. You know, like Morris has the potential to give you 20, and then he can also give you like 7. And then Caruso can give you 15, or he might give you 2. And
right.
And so it's like there's no player that you know exactly what you're going to get from them versus when you look at what?
Green.
Yeah, Danny Green. That's a great example. I mean, Danny Green in the bubble lost his ability to shoot. Did the Monstars take his talent? Like, I don't know what happened to him. He's just been horrible. He's been absolutely
like the 2K version of himself.
His 2K version is so broken. Can't make
horrible. It'd be wide open. Backboard break.
And so it's like these pieces don't make sense. And when you look at what old LeBron teams had, you had Mario Chalmers, Mike Miller, Shane Battier. These guys, you knew they're not going to be superstars, but you knew Shane Battier was going to give you a couple threes and play his heart out on defense. You knew Mike Miller had a laser for a jump shot. You knew what you were going to get from those guys.
And even with that team, with Mario Chalmers, you know Mario Chalmers would pull through. But when
he was one of the clutchest role players.
You know what they had when Chalmers didn't pull through, where he needed a break? Norris Cole.
Exactly.
Where basically we already have the format set up. All you have to do is play your heart out.
Exactly. And then think about that. Those Heat teams. Then they brought in Ray Allen off the bench. You know, like one of the most consistent 3-point shooters ever. And I mean, to think about the drop off between those Heat teams and this Lakers team, it's like, yeah, you have AD, who's one of the most talented bigs, but then you're bringing, you know, Kyle Kuzma off the bench. And I'm not sold on Kyle Kuzma at all.
I think Kyle Kuzma is a great player. If he only had like good pieces around him that were also on the bench, I think they'd be a great, you know.
I mean, you saw what happened. I think Kyle Kuzma was putting up numbers, 1, because it was a bad team, and 2, because Lonzo Ball was giving him easy looks. I mean, Lonzo Ball is one of the best passers in the league, and he was giving Kyle Kuzma all the looks in his favorite spots on the floor. And to this day, I would think if the Lakers could have got, you know, if the Lakers could have got AD without giving up Lonzo, they'd be in such a better position.
Sure.
And so, anyway, it's been fun. Hopefully your Lakers pull through. I'm very doubtful, but I'll do anything to not see Paul George win a championship. Meanwhile, the Thunder get ousted in the second round.
that same energy. I need you to keep that same energy, and I want to see you in the second round because it's never likely with the Thunder.
All right. We'll have a turnaround. You'll see us in the conference finals. We'll be actually playing the Lakers. Hey, don't sleep on the
what?
Don't sleep on Chris Paul, SGA, Danilo Gallinari, Steven Adams, and Lou Dort. Man, we got a really good team out here in Oklahoma City.
I hear drugs. I hear delusion.
All right. It's been fun.
All right. See you, bro.
See you. Well, there you have it. Another great podcast talking about the Lakers, the bane of my existence. Make sure to follow me on social media. My ads can be found in the podcast description. And make sure to subscribe to this podcast on whatever listening platform you prefer. We're everywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasting needs. As always, may the rest of your day be the best of your day. Cheers.